Hello, hello. This is Aurelia Davis, the Educator's Educator, coming to you the first week of spring break. Oh, I used to look forward to these spring breaks when I was teaching, and now you teachers are enjoying them also. And I'm saying take the time to relax and reflect on your year thus far because it's almost over. It's almost over, so you really don't have that much further to go, but at the same time, this is time when you will just take things back into your whole system as to how you did. And like I've been saying all along, give yourself some credit. Give yourself some credit. You survived up to this particular point and you're still in there. That's a good thing. That is a good thing. And you want to be able to just get when others will not give you credit for what you've done as an educator, you want to give yourself credit as an educator. You want to give yourself credit as an educator. Well, I just wanted to take the time out to just discuss. I remember while teaching, there were just so many different levels of, I would say, what do you call them? How to teach children. Let's just put it that way. How to teach children. We had cooperative grouping. We had whole language. We just had a little bit of everything just came across the table, and you were encouraged to use these methods in your classroom. And some of them worked and some of them didn't. I have always been, after teaching for so long, I have always been an advocate for meeting children where they are. Meeting children where they are. I'll say it again, meeting children where they are. And when I say meeting children where they are, that means if you're working with children that lives on the west side of Chicago, you have to meet them on the west side of Chicago. If you're working with children that live up in Lakeshore, around Lakeshore Drive, upper north, a whole different culture up there, that's where you have to meet those particular children. You cannot assume that every children within a particular district or within a particular city have the same skills. I'll say that again. You cannot assume that children in a particular city or a particular district have the same skills. Every child is different, and sometimes there are differences just within a particular household or a particular neighborhood, and definitely within a particular school. The children come to you with different experiences. They come to you with different structures or behaviors that they've learned or have not learned. So you basically have to meet that particular child where they are at that particular time. And that's the only way you'll be able to teach them successfully or be successful in teaching them, because you were able to meet them where they are. So if you have a third grader and they're basically at a second grade level, you have to meet that child at the second grade level and build up to the third grade level. Okay, you have to meet them at the second grade level as far as skills at the second grade level, and just pour into that child, pour into that child, pour into that child, and build them up to the third grade level, build them up to the third grade level. So what ends up happening is that the different genres that we've had in the past of how to teach children, it's even more different today than it has ever been, for the simple reason that we're finding that the knowledge and content students have is not, we just can't basically say that it's there. It's been there. And unfortunately, if they're coming from a household where where education has not been very strong, in other words, if the parents uh, are, may not have graduated from high school and those types of things, then you're talking about children that are coming from homes where parents cannot help them in an educational manner. They cannot help them in an educational manner. And we're not faulting or pulling down anybody. But those situations do exist. Those situations do exist. Those cultures do exist. Do exist. I came from a household where my father just got as high as eighth grade, but my mom did graduate from high school and later went on to get a degree from a college. But my father didn't have those skills, but he was still able to function. he was still able to read. He was able to do these things. So we're not going to just judge what as to what he had and what he did not have. We want to be able to meet the children and the students as to what they need because of this particular culture, what they need because of this particular culture. Um, Project based learning was not, I'll say, labeled and titled when I was teaching, but I do understand it. I did a little research on it and read up on it, and I do understand where they're coming from. I do understand why it's needed, because what it does is allows students to think out of the box. There's no right and wrong answers like there used to be in a classroom. We used to stand there and give a lecture, and then the children had to come up with the right answer. There were no wrong answers. In other words, they had to come up with the answer that was connected with the content that we had taught. It had to be connected with the content we had taught. So project-based learning is that particular program that is in place now that's helping children get to the point where they can learn in the areas that they need. In other words, the structured learning that will help them reach the epitome of what they need to know about a particular subject. I did do some research, and I was able to uh, reach over from smartlablearning.com, and it stated PBL, or project based learning, is a student centered approach that utilizes real world problems or challenges in an effort to increase student motivation and engagement. The important words that I learned was student motivation and engagement, because if you are teaching a lesson and if the children are not actively engaged, then basically you have not taught the lesson. If the children are not actively engaged, then you have not taught the lesson. So they need to be motivated. There needs to be engagement based on this theory that students will have a deeper connection to what you're trying to teach them. Students will have a deeper connection in what you're trying to teach them. And what even makes it even more relevant is that if there's a impact on their community where they live, they're definitely going to engage in this particular thing. In other words, Johnny, if you turn around and you learn how to, you find out that through science that keeping the trash up out in your, picking up the trash in your community makes your community more beautiful, then that's something, plus you're recycling. You put the educational component that the children are recycling. Then you turn around and what you do is that you start a campaign to pick up, for people to pick up, or students or young people to pick up in their community the trash that's on the sidewalk, sweep the sidewalks and pick up the dirt, pick up bottles and cans and things, and recycle these things. Then you are making an impact. You are doing basically project learning. Why you need to do it, how you need to do it, and the results because you did it. The results are because you did it. You turned yourself into, you turned your neighborhood into a recycling space where people can basically recycle things. Um, so that's what project based learning is all about: giving the children, making things more relevant to them, making a particular subject more relevant. So it's more meaningful to them. And then if you're thinking about it, STEM has gone into project based learning very heavily because we're trying to build relevance as far as careers are concerned. And we're trying to make that relevance so important that it affects preschoolers. At this particular point in time, we're working children at the ages of 2 and 3. May, at one time you ask them, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they'll tell you they want to be a doctor, they want to be this, and so on and so forth. Well, now if you introduce what it takes to become a doctor, what it takes to become a veterinarian, what it takes to become an engineer at the preschool level, then what you start doing is you start building a some content in a child so that they know that they're working toward a particular goal, even at the age of preschool, going into elementary school, and of course, going into high school through college. Through college. Now, you ask, will it possibly change? Yes, yes, it will, because sometimes they want to do one thing and then they find out they don't like doing it, they may change it. But the thing is that if they get the idea in their head, in order for me to be a veterinarian, I need to start working around animals. I need to know how animals, where they live, how they, what the habitat is, how do they, what do they eat? Do animals get sick? So forth. How many different types of animals? How many different types of pets are there? And if you start pushing this in the preschool level, you will be surprised how many children just basically pick up that particular skill and just start reading on it. And then you give them activities and projects to work on about being a veterinarian, even at the preschool level. Yes, you can do that. Yes, you can do that. And then you will find out that these particular children, then what happens, these children start to engulf that particular mindset that I want to become a veterinarian. And in order for me to become a veterinarian, these are the things that I need to do. These are the things that I need to find out. These are the things that I need to inquire about. You know, and preschoolers, it's good about preschoolers because they don't just pick up something and leave it alone. They will turn around and take that particular item and they will just go into it to the point where they are discovering it. They will take it apart. They will ask you questions. Where did it come from? Who made it? How does it work? Why is it this particular size? Why is it this particular color? Just anything and everything. So they're very, very inquiry based as to why something is in preschool. That's what happens, and that's the discovery phase of learning. Preschoolers are in the discovery phase. They have millions and millions of questions, and some of these questions you can answer, but a lot of times they come to their own conclusions, which is very good also. Continuing project-based learning, like I said before, it's projects. First of all, there are projects. So that means a teacher would possibly give her students, break them up into groups and give them a particular project to work on. Now, being that breaking them up in groups, every group doesn't have to work on the same thing. Every group does not have to work on the same thing. And while I was teaching, I just made sure that there was a variety of projects that my students would work on. And it was interesting because we taught Chicago history in third grade. And so I would give one group the Potawatomi Indians. I would give another group the Chicago Seal. I would give another group the Chicago Fire. And what they would do is they would investigate and inquire about these particular things about Chicago and then come to their own, make some conclusions about some things. And at the same time, then they would do a presentation. They would do a formal presentation. And what made it basically project based at the time is that because they lived in Chicago. They lived in Chicago. So that made it even more interesting to them as to them wanting to find out why things happen and what was it about Chicago that made Chicago interesting, and the components of project-based learning breaks up into, I think, about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about 8 components. They include content knowledge and skills. It includes authenticity and relevance, inquiry, collaboration. I like the collaboration part. So that means basically children are no longer working by themselves. They have been put together, and this is a good social interaction also. So you're putting them with some other students within a particular classroom setting, and they are working on it. Now, some teachers would select the children that are going to be into particular groups, but I always had a tendency of allowing the children to get into groups that they needed. And what I would do is, as far as collaborative efforts and collaborative grouping, what I would do is I would state the groups that were going to be working together, the groups that I wanted. And at the same time, the children would pick numbers, random numbers or whatever. So I would make sure that no particular collaborative group was heavier than another one. And then sometimes I would, after they had finished that particular project, then I would switch them over, because for them to learn about another particular work on another particular project, just one particular project is not enough. There's time for them to work on 2 to 3 projects, and for them to be so involved that they know more about that particular project than you as a teacher do. So inquiry, collaboration, 21st century skills. That means bringing that particular project into 2023, bringing it into what we are looking at now. That includes technology, that includes Facebook, that includes all kinds of things that was not in existence about 10 years ago, but that is in existence now. You may even want to bring in the information about the pandemic. This is a good time for children to do project-based inquiry or project-based problems and learning about the pandemic. About the pandemic. You'll be surprised how many doctors will possibly come out of what happened in the pandemic. Not that we ever want it to happen again, but it's a learning goal that basically our children can now take that uh, COVID experience and turn it into project-based learning. Community partnerships. It's not always everything can be learned in the classroom. Everything is not in the all the resources are not in the classroom. Take the children out. Take the children out into the neighborhood, especially if you're doing something that would be an impact on their particular community. That would be an impact on their particular community, like I talked about before. The young man that decided he wanted to do recycling within his community. Well, his little group would go out and discover what kind of recycling already exists, what kind of recycling does not exist, and then basically going through the neighborhoods to see if there's receptacles, or garbage cans or things that can take recyclable items like bottles and cans and things like that. And then just basically even tapping into the neighbors to see, do you recycle? How many people even know what recycling is in some neighborhoods? So that community partnership would be a very good, relevant situation for children to get involved in, to find out exactly what's going on in the community. Feedback and revision. As they go out and do these project-based learning activities, they want a lot of feedback. They want to know if they're doing things, how things are being received, how things are being accepted, and it is received and accepted, the same thing. But what I mean is that, the openness to what they're doing, what the children would be doing, the openness as to what they see, what they're hearing, the feedback. In other words, let's just go back to the recycling. Um, Approaching a neighbor who said, "Do you recycle?" No, because I don't really have the bins to do the recycling, And what does recycle? I don't understand how to recycle. What do I recycle? So that's a perfect opportunity for those children to be able to give that particular person information on how to recycle, and then let them know that there's certain levels of recycling. Let them know that there's certain levels of recycling. Everything is not done, immediately. And some days you may have cans and bottles, and another day you may have cardboard boxes and paper. And that's a totally different way to recycle. So one thing about project-based learning, I would feel that there's really not a beginning and ending to it. I believe that when you're a teacher and you're setting up project-based learning in your classroom, you give your children maybe about, um, you start them out with with the particular curriculum, and setting them up with their project-based learning skills, what they're doing. And then at the same time, what you want them to do is to give them like maybe a week or 2 weeks to really get things rolling. But at the same time, don't believe that all of those activities are going to stop or start at the same time. And so what you do is you would eventually tap into your young people and ask them, okay, do you have a report on the recycling? Do you have a report on Chicago? So on and so forth. But if they are continuing to learn and if they're eager learning about what they have been given to do, it's going to go on and on. And you'll be surprised. Sometimes it goes into the next grade, which is good because basically they have invested in what they're learning about. And because they have invested in what they're learning about, they are thinking about it and they are living it and they are breathing it on a daily basis. And that makes learning more relevant. That makes learning more relevant than it has ever been before, than just reading a story and answering questions. We're getting away from that. We're getting away from that. What I do also like about project based learning is that how does the classroom look? What does the classroom look like? There was a time when you went into a classroom and you just decided that things were not things if they were noisy and if they were unruly and everything, nothing was taking place. Learning was not taking place. That is no longer the case. That is no longer the case. Children are now, you walk into a classroom, you want to go into a busy classroom. You want your classroom to be busy. You want children to be talking and collaborating and debating about things and asking questions and bringing and writing on boards and smart boards. You want all of that on their laptops, Googling information. You want all of that to be taking place. You are a facilitator. You are a facilitator on this in the classroom now, where and it's something I've always wanted to be. I always wanted to be more of a facilitator, and you're just going around and you're just helping them bring up that next question. Okay, well, okay, Johnny, what is your group doing? Okay, well, what about this? And what about that? Is somebody recording this? Is somebody writing it down so we can look up this up later? Did you ever think about this? Did you ever think about that? Okay, what makes this more interesting? What makes this relevant? Is it positive? Is it negative? All of those questions. And as you introduce those questions to them, they start to take on a life within that particular group where those children are starting to ask themselves those questions. And I call it positive arguments, positive arguments. Well, I think it should be this way. Well, I think it should be that way. Okay, well, why do you think it should be that way? What are your points for it being that way, and what are your points, and how can you bring those points together to collaborate to make something good, or are they always going to be separate? As an educator, project-based learning just brings out the brilliance in everybody. It brings out the brilliance in everybody, and it allows everybody to do that critical thinking that we sometimes have a tendency of squashing down and just keeping it to ourselves. But that critical thinking is so very, very important because we have critical thinkers in this day and age, and they have to be encouraged to make mistakes. They have to be encouraged to to create problems. They have to be encouraged to solve problems. All of those things need to be in place in order for children to continue to build up the skills, those brain skills that they need in order to just keep going forward and everything. And will every child look the same? No, no, no. Every child will not look the same. Every child will not learn the same. Every child will not have the same information. But as long as they come out of that particular classroom with something, that is very, 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 very important. I want to go back to one more thing. Project based learning has basically is very encouraged as far as to connect with STEM, the STEM curriculum, because if you think about science, if you think about technology, if you think about engineering, and if you think about math, all of those components are so deep and have so many parts and so many components to it that you cannot teach one particular component about engineering, technology, science, or math. It's because it has so many others. And so as the children are investigating those STEM components, science, technology, engineering, and math, one child in science may want to know about how many African American scientists are there. Okay, what did they invent? What can I invent? What can I create? And it's the same thing with technology, the same thing with engineering, and the same thing with math. So STEM and project-based learning goes together hand in hand. That's the best way to teach a STEM curriculum is project-based learning. Project-based learning. If you haven't yet, go on over to my website. I am still introducing my STEM cards and for primary, for preschool. I'm sorry, for preschool, and purchase some and just see exactly what's going to be how you can use those particular STEM cards to teach project-based learning, or how you can teach project-based learning through the STEM cards. All right, this is Aurelia Davis. This has been very interesting to me. Teachers, I hope you are just sort of taking the time to do a brain freeze during spring break, but at the same time, relax. Get ready for that last mile when you go back to your students and continue, getting to some of the activities like graduations and proms and so on and so forth, those end of the year activities, make it great, make it fun, and I congratulate you for getting this far. This is Aurelia Davis, the educator's educator. Take care and have a great one. Bye bye.